excited to be here again for this month's episode of So What's Your Story? And today we are going to talk about walking limitations. Before we do that, I am going to share my screen. Yes, I do want to share my screen. And what happened there? That's my cute little grandbaby. Cute little grandbaby. And sorry, guys. Technology at its best. I am not the guru, but here we go. So today we are going to talk about walking limitations. So my name is LaQuita Parks, and I am the owner and CEO of Walking Limitations. I'm sorry, of Pay Pro V Publishing. Pay Pro V means pain, progress, victory, because we believe without pain there is no progress, and without progress there can be no victory. So we simply help you take your story from a thought to a realization. So in January we started doing a series called So What's Your Story, and this series is all about helping you write your story in the midst of whatever you have going on. So every month we do a different topic. So today's topic is walking limitations. So before we get started, I cannot do this without my sponsors, and I would like to give a shout out to Johnny Brown with Legal Shield, to Bob Mackey and Michael Green with the Yono Clip, to Darian Hardison with Great Apparel, Alpha Aviation, Kelvin King, The Diamond Factor, Barbara Beckley, America's Supermom, Lachelle Atkins. Also want to shout out to Shaquanda Mitchell with SM Events and Designs. And I would like to say hello to our special guests who are also our new sponsors, Brandy Tolbert, who is the owner and founder of Messy Mommies podcast, and her sidekick, my daughter, Shantae Tanner. So I'm so excited to have you join us for this segment of What's Your Story? So here's the agenda. This is what we're going to go over today. We're going to do the introduction, which I've just done. I'm going to let them introduce themselves in a moment. And we're going to kind of do a quick recap on how to start your story. Then we're going to talk about some walking limitations and have a conversation with our guest. And we're going to introduce you to Messy Mommies. And then we'll tell you how you can reach out. And I would be a bit remiss if I did not say a special shout out to my co-host, Mr. Kevin Vaughn. Thank you so much with the MLT Network of allowing me to have this platform to share my story and to help other people tell their stories. So thank you, Kevin. I appreciate you. Okay, so Kevin must be on mute. So he's running things from the background. So that is absolutely fine. So right now I want to introduce my special guest. I want to introduce Messy Mommies. So Miss Brandy, could you please introduce yourself? You're on mute.
You're on. Can you hear me? Sorry about that. Hello. My name is Brandy. I am the CEO, founder, and host of the Messy Mommies podcast. We air every Thursday. Podcast is just about being a messy mom and all the things that we go through with being a mother.
Awesome. So would you say there are some walking limitations in that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So hello to your sidekick. Would you introduce yourself, Shantae?
Hi, I'm Shantae. I wouldn't consider myself a sidekick. I would say partner in crime.
Okay. Partner in crime. Hey, whatever floats your boat. All of that seems like some walking limitations to me. So for those of you out there listening, and we are live, guys, for those of you out there listening, Shantae these ladies are very, very special to me. I've known them for quite a while, especially the partner in crime. I've known her for a little bit over 30 years. So we have a personal connection. So if you see the energy get a little interesting, that's okay, because That one belongs to me. That's my daughter. So I'm so excited to have you ladies here. And we have a guest on too, Mr. Brooks. He may not come on camera, but if he wants to say hello, please feel free to say hello to us, Mr. Brooks.
Chris, where are you going? Hello, all you fine people. I'm in Cookers at this particular time, and I know y'all don't want to see what's going on in Cookers.
Okay. Okay, if you guys didn't hear that, he said he's in Publix right now. So he know we don't want to see what's going on in public. So it's lunchtime or dinner time. So what we're going to do today, we're going to talk about walking limitations and what that looks like. So let's see. So what's your story? So this walking limitations is our second. I'm sorry, we're in April. Okay, my months have started to run together, guys. So we are in April, and this month we're talking about walking limitations. So I want to go back over some things. When we first started, we started with, how do I write my story? There are so many people who have a story. So 100% of everybody living has a story. 100% everybody living and dead has a story. Those people who have a story, for everybody that has a story, not everybody will want to write their story. And there's a lot of different reasons for not wanting to write the story. So we kicked off our segment with just start. So how do I write my story? You just start. And how do you do that? You START. You set some goals. You think positively, acknowledge your why, retrain your brain, and then you take baby steps. So you simply start, and anything that you do has to start somewhere. If you get up, if you're hungry and you want to eat, you've got to get up, you've got to go to the kitchen, you've got to open the refrigerator, you've got to pull the food out, you've got to start. So from everything we do in our lives, we have to start. And writing your story is no different. Okay. So we're going to see a little bit, we're talking about walking limitations. So I'm going to share a little excerpt with you about my walking limitations. And a lot of you may already know my story of walking limitations. My first book is called Walking Limitations, and that's my true story of what happened to me. So this is just a short excerpt from that. Walking limitations, by other people's definition, is all about the limitations that people put on me, and then about the limitations that I put on myself. So what happened? I was the crippled child. So as the crippled child, because although I learned how to walk again, I wore braces. So talk about Forrest Gump. I was the first Forrest Gump. Click, clack, I had those ugly steel braces. They were not like they are now, the plastic braces that fit in the shoe. These were real Forrest Gump braces. One shoe was brown with the ankle boot shoe, and then the steel bracelet that you had to screw on and tie the belt around the top of the leg. That was me. I couldn't run. I couldn't go outside and play like the other kids. And every time I did, I was picked out to be picked on. Walking limitations. So in the midst of that, I was a victim. I was a victim when the nurse came in and stuck me in the leg with the needle. I was a victim when I was born to a teenage mother, the second child to a teenage mother. And then guess what? My mother was a teenager and she never finished high school. So doesn't that sound like another walking limitation? What was it? College degree? What was that? Nobody in my family had been to college. Nobody. My grandmother, my mother didn't even have a high school diploma. So I was born into a situation of walking limitation after walking limitation after walking limitation. Wow. So that's just a small part of my story, but I titled my story Walking Limitations. So today I want to talk about how to write your story in the midst of your own walking limitations. Now, we all know that there's been a pandemic, right? This pandemic has struck all of us, and who would be the first to say that that was a walking limitation? Okay, it turned life around as we knew it. We went from being able to come and go freely, go to the store, go grocery shopping, go to the movies, go to eat, go to dinner, vacation, any and everything we wanted to do, and be as free as we wanted to be. And then bam, pandemic hit. Talk about a walking limitation. So we had to shelter in place, and for some of us, some people don't like living with themselves, so to be able to have to live in the house with somebody else, that was a real big walking limitation. According to statistics, some couples didn't make it. They didn't like being in the house with each other. Some parents found out they didn't like being in the house with their children. Some children found out they didn't like to be home with mama. So we had to endure these walking limitations. So how do you write your story, tell your story in the midst of your own walking limitations? So that's what we want to talk about. So I want to talk to Brandy and Shantae. And Brandy, first of all, tell us about Messy Mommies.
Yes, so Messy Mommies is a podcast that I created mostly, and I'm just going to be very honest if you don't mind. I created this podcast with young African American mothers in mind. Reason being is because I feel like when it comes to the struggles that we have with being a mother as a young African American, there's really no one that we have to look up to or that we have to reference with how to handle things. So we have been conditioned to whatever it is that we're dealing with, we just kind of deal with it and don't talk about it. So I wanted to create a platform for us to talk about it and, you know, just really open the door for us to have that open dialogue about things that we're going through, you know, such as postpartum. There's a lot of young African American women who are going through postpartum and don't even know that it's postpartum that they're going through because we don't talk about it. So I just wanted to create a platform for us to talk about it. So that's what Messy Mommies is about, because we all a mess. We all are a mess, and we're figuring it out together over on Messy Mommies.
So what was the inspiration behind it? Just to give African American moms in a certain age range the ability to talk through some things. So we're talking about walking limitations. So to address those walking limitations.
Well, it is to address it, but it's also to understand it, because if I'm being honest, when I you know, I have a 6-year-old, and when I had her and I went through postpartum with her, I didn't have anybody to talk to about it. I just kind of had to figure it out. And I got into a help group, and in this help group, there was not a lot of us in this group because we just deal with things and we push it down and we push it down. And so I wanted to create a platform where it's okay to talk about those type of things, and it's okay to be verbal about whatever it is that you're going through, because motherhood is not pretty, you know, not all the time. Let's just be honest, we struggle sometimes with different things. How amazing would it be to be able to listen to a podcast that they're talking about the same things that you're going through, and you're like, okay, I'm not alone with this.
Necessarily, and then also having to have somebody to talk to you where you're thinking, oh wow, that's what I'm going through. And you know, there are a lot of times when people are saying what you're thinking and you just don't want to say it, you don't want to bring it up for whatever reason. So that's pretty cool. So tell me, so you did it in the midst of a pandemic. You started in the midst of a pandemic. Why was it just the timing? What made you decide, okay, you know what, let me pull the trigger on this? Because I know you didn't wake up one morning and say, oh, I'm gonna do a blog, and you know, I got all these things going on, but I'm gonna start a blog. And you didn't wake up and start it today. There was a process, right?
Absolutely was. So that was something that I have been thinking about doing for a while, because I have different friends that are mothers, and my perspective on motherhood is a little different. As if you have listened to the podcast, you will see, you will hear, because Shantae and I have discussed the fact that we had children later in life. And so because we've had children later in life, our patients are set up a little different with our children. And so the way that I mother my children is a little different than the way a 16, 17, 18, even a 21-year-old would, because I waited so long. So because of that, I have a lot of people who ask me for mom advice prior to me doing my podcast, right? And so because of that, once the pandemic hit, I had a lot of time at home. And so that's when I was like, this is the perfect time, because I'm not the only mother at home. There's all mommies are at home right now. So let me go ahead and launch this podcast and just see how it does, because there's a lot of mothers at home that would love for something like to listen to something like that. And it's been amazing. It's been
awesome. So listeners, in the midst of these conversations, we're going to give some tips. So first tip, number one, so get your pen and your paper and write this down. So in the midst of your walking limitations, we're going to talk about tips on how to write your story in the midst of your walking limitation. So tip number one is be prepared. Mm-hmm. Does that sound right? So you thought, okay, I want to do a podcast. There was a lot of preparation, I'm sure, that went into that, right? Yeah. And I know you didn't have, I'm sorry, I know you didn't just kind of push everything aside and say, this is what I'm going to do. You had to create this in the midst of your world, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, this was a thought that was in my head for some time, to do a podcast, but I didn't have confirmation about it. You know what I mean? And so I kept thinking about it. I should do it. When the pandemic hit and then I had time at home, for me, I looked at that like, this is confirmation, because now I have the time to do it. Prior to the pandemic, I didn't have the time to do it. And so during the pandemic, now, it allowed me a little bit more free time.
Okay. So number one, be prepared. Number two, remove the excuses.
Absolutely.
Remove the excuses.
Absolutely.
Okay. So at what point did you decide that I need a partner in crime?
I decided that as soon as I decided to do the podcast, I actually knew that I wanted Shantae to be my partner in crime immediately when I thought about doing the podcast. Mm-hmm. However, I was a little hesitant to bring the idea to her because, one, she was about to have a baby herself. I know that she's the type of person that kind of likes to be behind the scenes with things. She doesn't like to usually be in the forefront with things. And so I was a little hesitant, but the conversations that, and Mom, I call her Mom because she's my mom, but Shantae and I have been friends for a very long time. So the conversations that Shantae and I have outside of the podcast, I felt like were enough to just do a podcast off of those conversations. So if we go ahead and just record the things that we're talking about, I am so sure that a lot of mothers can relate to those things. So that's exactly what happened. I presented to her what my idea was. I asked her if she wanted to take the journey with me. I was shocked that, she was like, yeah, let's do it. And I was like, really? And she's like, yeah. So in the beginning of the podcast, I think it's maybe the first 6 or 7 episodes, Shantae is not on the podcast. And that's because Shantae had a baby. And so we had to give her proper time to recuperate and get herself together. And as soon as she felt comfortable, she jumped right into the podcast with me. So I think that was New Year. That was New Year. So we kicked off the New Year with Shantae on the podcast.
Okay. So partner in crime, Shantae, let me hear from you. So listeners, we have number one, tips to writing your story in the midst of your walking limitations. Tip number one, be prepared for storms. Be prepared. So in anything that you do, you have to be prepared. You have to, if you're not prepared, then get prepared to start writing your story. Number two, remove the excuses. We can come up with 100,000 excuses for everything that we go through. And it looks like I didn't have this for number 3, but it looks like number 3 is move out of your comfort zone. And that's what it is. Does that sound accurate, Shantae? When Brandy said that when she was hesitant to approach the idea to you because you're a behind the scenes kind of person. So how is that getting out of your comfort zone and being the partner in crime for the podcast for Messy Mommies?
Well, since we are on podcast, we're not on video and we're not in front of an audience, I still feel like I'm behind the scenes. So to me, it hasn't changed from us having conversations on the phone. So I can't say that I'm out of my comfort zone just yet.
Okay. So I'm curious. So how are you feeling now that you're in front of the camera and not behind the scenes? So because this is broadcasting live to, I don't know, 1 million people, right, Kevin?
Are she cute?
Absolutely. Yeah. So sorry about that, Ms. Parker. Absolutely. Matter of fact, we're sitting here putting this right now on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Nextdoor, all around the globe. So get excited. We're live right now.
Oh yeah, that's
Sounds
so
like
cool.
sounds like 1 million people. That's tell me, Shantae, what were your thoughts when the messy mommy, when she brought the topic to you? What were your initial thoughts?
Um, how would we do it? I never was like, um, absolutely not, because because I'm a very transparent person. So it doesn't bother me to speak on things. So it didn't bother me at all. Thought it was pretty smart because the conversations we have, we can make money off of.
Okay, awesome. So can you give me an example of one of the topics that you guys have talked about?
I mean, we have a lot to talk about, but I think we've hit on a little of everything when it comes to motherhood. Um, one of our first couple of episodes together, we talked about our birth stories with both of our kids. Both of us having our first babies, both of us having emergency C-sections, and then the second one's having planned C-sections. Um, so that's a story. I know a girl I went to college with, when I put a snippet up on my Instagram page about not going into labor at all because Amir, my oldest, was the cord was around his neck, so he never dropped. I never felt any contractions. She said, I have never heard anybody had the same story I had. So that's one of the topics that was pretty popular. I mean, all of them are pretty popular, but that's one that stands out to me.
That and you know what, that makes a lot of sense, because when you look in terms of your story, you guys have birthing story. Everybody who has a baby has a different story, and that's what the uniqueness is about telling your stories, whatever your walking limitation. I had 3 children, 3 cesareans, and all 3 of those stories were different. And so my walking limitations are different from your walking limitations. What you've gone through and what you have to deal with in the midst of your story is your story. So you don't, so what some people do is think, oh, well, my story isn't as good as her story or his story, or my story isn't interesting, and or nobody's going to care, nobody wants to hear it. But there is always an audience that's waiting for your story. So with walking limitations, Brandy, I want to ask you, so you started the podcast. How do you go through and determine what topic you're going to speak about?
Oh, okay. So we all know that motherhood, we could talk about motherhood all day and night, right? There is a vibe that happens when it's a mommy talking to another mommy, right? So we always get really excited to talk to each other and hear each other's experiences. I think that there are some things that we all deal with across the board that should be addressed, such as labor and delivery stories, like she said, generational curses, which was a topic on our podcast. Disciplining your children, apologizing and disciplining, and how you discipline your children. So I try to keep the topics very broad, to things that all mothers are going to have to deal with at some point in time, right? Also with my with the podcast, we also have a Facebook group, right? And so with our Facebook group, there's a lot of discussions within those groups and within that group. And so because of that, sometimes I use those discussions in that group as topics on our podcast. There's other times where there's situations that we are going through at the time where I bring that to the podcast. And for instance, I think 2 episodes ago, I had one of the titles of the episodes was Traveling Babies. Because I had just traveled to Colorado with both of my children. And that was the first time that I have flown with my children. And so that was something that I wanted to discuss because it was a very interesting experience. And so we just use life as topics. And like I said, there's sometimes where there's things that we are in the midst of, like we just wrapped up the first season of the podcast. Our 20th episode was about balancing friendships through motherhood, because that's what my partner in crime was dealing with at that time, so we wanted to discuss and have an open discussion about it. So it's just kind of like I said, I just try to leave it something. I just try to make it things that are common amongst all mothers, so that it can remain relatable.
Okay. Now, I like that. So, and I'm sure flying with 2 little ones, I'm sure that was quite interesting. I can only imagine. So what would you say are some of your walking limitations? So those of you who are listening out there in the nation, in the world, we have tips on writing your story while you're going through your walking limitations. So we said, number 1, be prepared. Be prepared. Just like you prepare for disasters. And I think I can honestly say none of us were prepared for this pandemic. And I speak for myself, and I speak for many, many, many other people. None of us were prepared for this pandemic. It happened so quickly. But be prepared. If you're not prepared, get prepared. Remove the excuses and get out of the comfort zone. And the next one is start writing. Just start writing. Pick up a pen, put it to paper, and start writing. So you schedule some time to write. So Brandy, tell me, what are some of the walking limitations that you go through in the midst of doing the Messy Mommies? Because you got life, you got a life, right?
And to be honest with you, that's one of the main things that is a walking limitation for me, because I do have a life. If you listen to the podcast, I say over and over again, I have a 6-year-old daughter who's autistic, and I also have a 16-month-old daughter. And so the 2 of them take a lot of my time. So a lot of times when I record this podcast, it's after they're down for the night. And I don't have to worry about them anymore, and I can put the time into the podcast. So the biggest thing for me is balancing my life outside of podcasts, and being a mom and a wife and all of that, and then squeezing podcasts in there as well, So that's one of the major things. Another thing is the podcast has been taken off, right? And so one of the major things is I want to stay true to who I am and make sure that I'm hitting my main goal with the podcast, and that's to remain relatable to all mothers. You know what I mean? And so I think that's one of the things that I struggle with, because I have so many different people in my ear and so many different stories that I hear all the time, and so many different things that I could talk about. I talk to a lot of mommies every day, a lot of mommies every day. And I could take these stories and run with these stories on my podcast, but it wouldn't be true to who I am. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do. And and it's funny because it sounds like you can put together a book of stories with just from the stories that you've heard from the mommies. I do want to bring something up, and you mentioned that you have a daughter who's autistic. Yes. And for those of you that are listening, we have this is April, and April is Autism Awareness Month. And we're gonna, on a later show next week. So if you tune in next Tuesday, we're gonna, have that conversation with Brandy more in depth about what she's gone through with her daughter who is autistic. So we're talking about walking limitations. We're talking about writing your story, how to write your story. And this month's topic is we're having a conversation on walking limitations. So tell me a little bit about that. How do you manage? And I know you said you put the kids to bed. How do you when you hear the story of somebody that might be going through what you've gone through or what you're going through with your daughter who is autistic, do you give advice or some guidance, or do you just kind of listen? Because sometimes people are not open to receive certain kinds of advice. So how do you manage that with your daughter and with the podcast, and knowing that you talk to a lot of mommies who might not want to know? There's some who see the signs and they kind of put the blinders on. Those are some definite walking limitations. So how do you handle that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. My daughter being autistic is something that I wanted to make sure I was very, very, very transparent about on my podcast. Because 1 in 59 children are autistic, right?
Wow.
That is a lot of children.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of children. And so because of that, I knew that means that 1 in 59 mothers listening to my podcast are mothers of autistic children, correct? So
Yeah.
I wanted to remain, and that's another way that I remain relatable. Some mothers only listen to my podcast because they have autistic children.
Wow.
And so me being transparent about the struggles that I deal with having an autistic child, or the joys that I have with dealing with an autistic child, opens the door for those mothers to reach out to me. And my biggest thing is with those mothers is I don't want them to feel like they're alone, or that their child is the only child that's dealing with, that their child is the only child that has autism. Because what happens is if you're anything like me, my child was the first that I've ever seen autism. So it's not something that's hereditary. No one in my family had autism. No one in my husband's family had autism. This was the first time that we seen it. And so with it being the first time that you see it, there's levels, and there's stages that you go through. And what I'm finding is with talking to mothers, it's these different stages are very common across the board. So when you first find out that your child has autism, you kind of don't want anybody to know, because you don't know how people are going to respond, and you don't want people to treat your child any different, And so you allow people to say things like, oh, they just in their own world, that baby in their own world, and so, and it's not that the child is in their own world, it's that this child has autism, so going through those stages and being transparent about those stages on my podcast allow other mothers to be comfortable enough to reach out to me and say, hey, thanks for expressing what you're going through, because this is the same thing that I went through. And so what happens next? Like, where did you go next with it? What did you do next? And then I could tell them, and that keeps them listening, if I'm being honest, because it's almost like, today she gonna talk about being an autistic mom, or she gonna talk about her other daughter,
So it's like they're waiting for you, because you're helping them through their walking limitations. Mm-hmm. And that is amazing. And I love that. One of the reasons that I love doing this, so what's your story segment, is because helping people to realize they have a story and what that story might be. So your story could be your own story of, how you handle your child, or the moment of awakening, or the moment of awareness, or the moment of diagnosis. Mm-hmm. And your another story can be how you're helping maneuver somebody else through their story. So the bottom line is we all have walking limitations. And I believe that our stories people are waiting to hear your story. People are waiting. Sometimes we don't realize that our story is the pathway to healing somebody else's pain. Mm-hmm. So that's amazing.
You have to be willing, like you said, to get out your comfort zone and be vocal about what your story is. Because I went through that phase where I didn't want anybody to know my daughter had autism, right? when I first found out she had autism. I went through that phase, but now I expressed to her that her autism is her beautiful, and her autism is what makes her unique, and it's okay that she has autism, but being vocal about it also helps with the healing process of accepting it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because now you're like, okay, this is what it is. Let me be vocal about it, and let me talk to somebody else about it so that we can touch and agree, you know?
Yes.
And so
Yes.
that's the biggest thing, is being vocal about it and not holding your story within, because your truth will set you free.
That's right. So here's the thing. You have a story and your story is burning a hole inside of you. Well, keeping it inside of you is not going to help to heal that hole. So writing your story. Now, I'm a publisher. So again, for those of you who just tuned in, my name is LaQuita Parks and I am with PayPro Publishing, and I help people take their stories from a thought to a realization. So I am a publisher and I help you, and I love to help you make your story a thought, take it from a thought to a realization. But everybody that writes a story, you don't have to publish your story, but you still need to get your story out. If it means taking it and writing it down on paper, that's for the healing. Writing is therapeutic. That's why I started writing my story, Walking Limitations by Other People's Definition, because it started the healing process for me. So I was, my story, you guys heard a little bit of my story. I was born into walking limitations. It wasn't anything to do with me, didn't have anything to do with me, but I had to live in it. So I had to learn how to cope with what I was living in, and then learn how to help other people. For me, I have a strong faith. I am Christian, and I have a faith in God, and that literally saved my life. So accepting Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior saved my life, and then being obedient to the word, that's what helped me. And then having the support of family is very, very important. So when you go through your walking limitations, and I like how there is a process, every single thing is a process. And so you couldn't jump straight to getting out of your comfort zone without being prepared for the process. And you had to go through and you had to write about it and you had to put it down. And so in brainstorming, I'm sure you had to take a piece of paper and write on it, right? I'm sure you had to do that. So that's key in telling your story. You have got to start the process. So Shantae, I want to ask you, and I'm so excited. I see she has her hands full over there with little man. But what are some of your walking limitations? How are you able to? I know Brandy said she goes, when the kids are down, she's you guys can start doing your segments. So how do you do it? What are some of your walking limitations that you encounter in your story, or your, being a part of the Messy Mommies?
Balancing, because I do have a full-time job, and I also have some things I want to do outside of Messy Mommies. And then I also have 3 boys. So I would say those are some limitations, not necessarily negative, because they all assist me, I guess, or whatever, however you can put that. But yeah, I would say having to balance would be my biggest one.
So how do you do that? And tell us about some of the things that you do outside of Messy Mommies. What do you? I know you're the not the sidekick. You are the partner in crime with Messy Mommies. So what are some of the things that what are some of the things that you do outside of Messy Mommies?
I'm in the process of launching my own lifestyle blog called Randomness at its Finest. If you know me, you know that I am a very random person. I have a lot of random thoughts, a lot of random opinions, and just a lot of things.
Extreme.
I have, yes, very much so. I have opinions about things. So, yeah, I like to put that out there. I think it's interesting. I have funny opinions and I have real opinions. Like I said before, I'm very transparent. I do not lie. So I'm going to speak on what I want to speak on, how I want to speak on it. And I think that'll be a great blog for it. especially when it comes to my kids, things that I might purchase for them. When it comes to traveling locations we may go that may be family friendly, girlfriend friendly, partner friendly, things like that. I cook. So yeah, lifestyle blog I have going on. And yeah, and I do have a full-time job as a claim specialist at a very popular insurance company. And I enjoy my job, but I don't think that's my see all be all. I don't want to retire from there.
Okay.
So I would like to prosper in other things.
All right. All right. So when you do your all things randomness at its finest, you know, what's your hopeful outcome?
I want it to be very popular. I would like to make money from it. That's why Mr. Brooks said, "Can I get an amen?" Yes, amen. Um, yeah, I would like to make money from it. I like speaking on things that I enjoy. So it's nothing better to speak on things that you enjoy and make money from it as well. So I would like for that to be one of my household's ultimate incomes, and to help me stop working at least before 40.
Okay. Okay. So for those of you who have just joined, we are talking about, so what's your story? And we are having a conversation about walking limitations. So we are talking about how can you write your story in the midst of your walking limitations. So we have Brandy and Shantae. Brandy is the founder of Messy Mommies, and Shantae is her partner in crime, and they do a Messy Mommy blog every Thursday. And if you have not tuned into that, you guys connect with Messy Mommies. They are on Facebook, and they are also on Apple. Is it Apple?
Yes,
Everywhere.
all podcast platforms.
Okay, all podcast platforms, and I've listened to it, and they are funny. They are funny, and they give a lot of information. So we were given tips. So tip number one, who remembers tip number one? Be prepared for storms. No matter what you do, no matter what your walking limitation is, when you start to write your story, you got to be prepared. Okay, and then number two, remove the excuses. Number three, get out of the comfort zone and limit looking for the storm. So sometimes when we're starting to write our stories, there are some people who have been working on their stories for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. I talked to somebody who said they've been working on their story for 35 years. And I said, well, you started working on your story when you were 2. So for 35 years, they started working on the story. I said, okay, so we're not going to do that another 35 years. Okay. We're not going to do it another 5 years. We're going to start working on this story right now. So I'm happy to say that person did sign up with Pay Pro V Publishing, and we are coaching them through telling their story. So stop looking for excuses. Got to remove the excuses, because as long as you say, hey, you know what, I can't do it, I don't have time to do it. So life happens. We all have walking limitations, right? I walk in pain every single day of my life. So for 47 years, I have walked in pain, chronic pain. So I wake up in pain, I go to bed in pain. That's my walking limitation. However, if I let that control me, then I would never have put pen to paper. And I like people. I like helping people. So working through my walking limitations and writing my story helped me help other people. So keep in mind, your story, somebody is waiting for your story. And then join a writing group. So this is a great opportunity to learn some tips and techniques on how to write your story. So I have a friend who the first thing she'll say is I can't write. I can't write. So you start where you are. She loves to garden. So she's writing a story called Sweet Potatoes in a Bucket. And her story is all about gardening, but that's her therapy. There's another person who has written a cookbook. That's her therapy. And not just any cookbook. This cookbook has real life episodes that led to, because whatever was going on in your life made you think, okay, you know what? I want to do a blog for Messy Mommies. I want to do a blog for mommies. So there was something that gave you the inspiration to do that. So with her cookbook, there were things that she would be having a bad day, and what did she do? She would go into the kitchen and start putting things together. So that became therapy for her. So that's her story. I have another person who wrote a children's book, and she poured her pain of losing her baby girl into a children's book. So she made her children, her daughter that passed away, the character in this children's book. So we all have a story. How you tell your story is up to you, but tell your story. Tell your story. So I see we have somebody that just joined us, Miss Inez. Miss Inez, would you like to say hello and introduce yourself? Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for the invitation, Miss LaQuita. How are you?
I am just fine. How are you?
I'm good. Ladies, excuse me. I'm a messy, I don't say person. I design clothes, so I got things all everywhere. So I lost my job to COVID last year, the end of April. So I had to become a full-fledged fashion designer. So I had to become self-employed. So that's where I am. But the funny thing is, when I tuned in and I see LaQuita talking about everybody has a story, and I guess she knows now that I write poetry. So that is the name of one of my poems, as a matter of fact, is everybody has a story, then every body has a story. And so every little scratch and scar and stuff that you have on your body, that has a story. And then you as a person has a story. So that's I haven't written the poem, but it's in my head to put on paper. So as LaQuita was saying, put that pen to paper. So I got so many things that I want to do, as well as I am also the hostess of Let's Do a Radio, sponsored by Do It All in the Mall, which Miss LaQuita is one of the, what do you want to call it, clients, authors under that, we call it avenue. And I still have to, I won't say interview her. I think she'll probably be interviewing me more than I'm interviewing her. And so that's something that I still need to do. But I have to put that pen to paper as well. But as far as I've been designing for over 40 years. I'm only 22. So
you look good, girl. You look good.
So I guess, they say that when we have to jump, we have to take that leap of faith. And so that's where I am trying to make my income as far as a full-fledged designer. So, and I also like, as I say, writing poetry. As my mom, she used to write poetry, and she has some poems. She's passed away now, so I have a lot of her poetry and poems and whatever. And so I need to put that pen to paper as well. So that's me in a nutshell. Oh, I'm from Washington State, but I'm not in Washington State anymore. I'm in the state of confusion.
In the state of confusion.
Yes, ma'am, in the state of
I
confusion.
love it. I love it. So all of those are walking limitations. It sounds like to me, Miss Inez, that we should be seeing something from a book from you and your mother published from PayPro Publishing before the end of the year. I'm just putting it out there. That's all. I'm just putting it out there. Okay. And so, and it sounds like Mr. Kevin wanted to say a few words, please.
Absolutely. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, all across the globe, welcome again to the Walking Limitations with these awesome women. I just wanted to say I would not be here if it wasn't for mommy. You got to understand that, ladies and gentlemen. I want you to really understand how important moms are in our society. I think most people do, but it's more about respect. We got to respect the woman. We got to respect the mom. We got to respect the people that help us grow each and every day. So I wanted to make sure people understood that. Also, too, as you were talking, ladies, as well, it's so important in what you're doing because of the networking. We all need each other. Bottom line, no doubt about it. We all need each other. You know, the wives need the wives, the mommies need the mommies, and so forth and so forth. So networking is what I heard today. Also, too, guess what? We got to express ourselves. People want to express themselves. And isn't it wonderful that you're doing the radio and the blog and the books and the poetry? That is so awesome. I just want to tell you, don't stop, because people, you can save a life, literally can save somebody's life. just doing that part of it. Let them express themselves and let them have a great time with you. And a lot of times it's in confidence. That's okay. We keep it in confidence if that's what they want, but let them express themselves. And last but not least, people want to know that you're concerned about them. Oh yeah, come on now. People want to know that you're concerned about them as well. Some people just don't think they have anybody, but it could be somebody right around the corner that could be their best friend for the rest of their life. So wonderful. I love this walking limitations. I got to say this real slow because I was thinking about walking limitations with unlimited opportunities. I love it.
I love it.
Back to you, Sister Parks. Thank you so much.
All right. So, as I was sitting here thinking and listening to you, Miss Inez, and yesterday I did an authors forum, and on that authors forum, we talked about, so I've written my book, now what? And Robert Brooks was on that call, and if I'm not mistaken, and Mr. Brooks, I hope you're still, you've finished in Publix by now, but did you say you had 30,000 pieces written, or did I make that number up, or was it 33,000 or 30,000?
Most of what you say is made up anyway. I said I have 35,000 documents on my computer.
35,000 documents. And so, Miss Inez, what I said to him yesterday, I'm going to say to you today, we need to work on getting them off of the computer and getting them into a book. Do you know how many people, and I tell Mr. Brooks this all the time, do you know how many people are waiting to be healed from some of that writing he has? Do you know how many people from your mother? I would love to read that. So we're talking about walking limitations, and now we're gonna add by other people's definition.
Okay.
Okay, so walking limitations by other people's definition. So I want to ask you guys a question, and we're gonna wrap up with the last tip. Use your voice. Use your voice. Embrace your writing. Don't run away from it. Run to it. Use your voice. Miss Inez, I read the poem that you wrote. I was just in awe. It was touching. It was fitting for what's going on in our country, and it was relevant. All of those things. So I asked you, has this been published yet? And when is it going to be published? It's amazing piece of work. But I want to say to each of you, write your story. Whatever your walking limitations is, don't shy away from your walking limitation. Write about it. Heal from it. If it's a past trauma, write about it. Now, I'm not saying publish it. I'm saying write it. Get it out. Get it from inside of you, get it outside of you, get it out, and connect with people. We need to support each other. Everybody needs somebody. Miss Inez, I think Robert Brooks is somebody that you can talk to, because anybody that's got 35,000 pieces of written need to talk to somebody. I think you guys, and he writes, he's a writer too, as you can tell. So I think connecting with you would be a great thing. Do you have any, Mr. Brooks, do you have any words that you want to share with us about walking limitations?
Well, I have a sermon called Walking Limitation, because to be a Christian, you must have some walking limitation. But I'm not going to preach that now. But I just like writing, and I like for other people to write so that I can read. If they didn't write, I couldn't read. So that's basically it for me right now, since we'll close it up. Thank all you ladies for what you had to say. Very informative. I'll go back and look at the video and take down some notes and all that good stuff, because I feed off of smart people. And as I always say, women are the smartest people on earth. Men just too dumb to know it.
How many times I tell you that, Brandy?
I love it.
We say that all the time.
Now, we're not gonna say anything. You guys heard it from a man, so it's better coming from them, because when we say it, you guys think that we're being ugly. So it's coming from a man. Thank you so much for shedding that light, Mr. Brooks.
Not really, because I have to say this because, excuse me, my ex-husband, he says, man, I messed up. He says, I really messed up.
You muted yourself, Miss Inez. You on mute, Miss Inez. She didn't, Miss Inez, you put yourself on mute. Repeat what you just said.
Hold on. Okay. Am I still on mute? No,
No,
a
you're
call
good.
was coming in. But no, my ex-husband, he said the same thing. He says, I messed up. I really messed up. And I just wish I hadn't messed up. He said that to me just the other day. So Mr. Brooks, confirmation.
That's exactly right. He proved my point. Stupid.
Absolutely.
That
So,
is correct.
so walking limitations, I want to ask you guys a question. If you, and think about it, I'm going to give you like a half a second to think about it. I'll start off. If I were writing a new story today and I had to name it based on my walking limitations, and keep in mind, I already, here's my book, Walking Limitations. And my book is available on Amazon if you're interested in it. Walking Limitations. If I was writing a new book based on walking limitations, what would the title of my book be? If I'm looking at myself and I pick up a mirror and I look at myself in the mirror, and I would say my title for my book would be called Trained by Pain, because oftentimes the pain trains you. It stops you from doing what you were gonna do and make you do what you need to do, or you push through it and you pay for it later. But my book will be called Trained by Pain, in the midst of my walking limitations. So what I want to say to you, I want you to tell me what the title of your books would be. And at the end of it, I want to say I want you to say walking limitations. So my book is Trained by Pain, in the midst of my walking limitations. So Brandy, what would your book be called?
My book would be called Mommy, You Got This.
Mommy, you got this, in the midst of
walking limitations.
Mommy, you got this. Mr. Brooks.
Mine would be Men Wise Up.
Men Wise Up, in the midst of walking limitations.
That's right.
Men Wise Up. I like that. Miss Inez, what would your title be?
Ugly.
Ugly.
Which stands for, I got a few connotations. Unconditionally, God loves you.
Love it.
And then I have these shirts. It's ugly for men is what is it called? For the women, it's oh shoot. See, now I got them all crazy because you got me on the 2 seconds. Uniquely gorgeous like you for the women, and uncommonly good looking, yeah, for the guys.
Like me.
Yeah. And walking limitations. So
In the
just
midst of walking, I like that. Give that to me again. I'm writing this down. Unconditionally, God loves you. And what's the one for women?
Uniquely gorgeous like you.
Okay, and what's the one for men?
Uncommonly good looking.
I like that.
See?
Good looking, yeah.
No, look.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That's the women. This is the guys.
Okay, I love it. That's
And
beautiful.
then I have another one for women, as I guess I'm priming myself. It has a mirror, and then it's dripping ugly. And it's a mirror that you can't actually see yourself, but when someone looks at you, they see you and they'll say, "Oh, you ugly." It says, "Yes, I'm uniquely gorgeous like you." So that's, when you see somebody, they see you, that you're ugly, and then I'm ugly, that we're all ugly.
I love it.
So that's how we, so I might even do on one shirt, we'll have a check mark, uniquely gorgeous, uncommonly good looking and unconditionally God loves you. So,
Oh, I love that. In the midst of your walking limitations.
in the midst of my
That
walking
sounds like that's the name of the book. That sounds like the name of your book. Poetry, I love it. Mr. Kevin, what's the name of your book?
Well, thank you so much. I was trying to play catch up here and also do everything else back here, but I just put something down here. You can walk them out, and then comma, your limitations. You can walk them out, your limitations.
Oh, I like that. I like that. So what you all, and Laverne just joined us. Laverne, if you heard that, we were talking about naming the title of our story. If you had to look at your life today and you had to name your story, what would it be? Mine would be Trained by Pain, in the midst of my walking limitations. And Brandy's is Mommy, You Got This, in the midst of my walking limitations. Mr. Brooks said, Men Wise Up. And Miss Laverne said, Ugly. And
No.
no, you didn't, Miss Inez. Miss Inez, you said ugly, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Mr. Laverne, what would yours be?
She might be on mute.
Okay. And it's okay if you didn't want to participate. That's, oh, he's off mute. What would your,
Can you hear me?
I can now. What would your book title be?
I guess it would be Reflection in My Mirror.
Reflection in My Mirror, in the midst of walking limitation. Okay, so it looks like Mr. Laverne and Mr. Brooks, and you guys need to connect with Miss Inez, because your books and what you guys are doing are all kind of including and messy mommies, and it looks like everybody needs to connect with everybody, because you got t-shirts and you got books and you got the Messy Mommy, the podcast, and awesome. And Pay-Per-View Publishing needs to publish all your stories. So we didn't forget you, Shantae. Shantae, what would your book be called? I see a cute little baby there.
Hello, Christian.
Hi.
See Nana? You see Nana?
Hi, man. That's my grandson. He's joining us today. He likes Nana. What would your story
Mine would be, I had something funny to say, but I guess I won't say it. But mine would be A Random Life.
A Random Life. Awesome. In the midst of my walking limitation. Awesome. So we have been talking about, thank you so much. We have been talking about walking limitations. So what's your story? Telling your story in the midst of your walking limitations. 100% of everybody living and dead has a story. But out of the 100% of us that have a story, only a percentage of us will tell the story. Outside of those people who take the time to tell their story, even a smaller percent of those people will actually publish their stories. So how do you heal? Tell your story. How do you get started telling your story? You simply start. You simply start. You set a goal. You think positively. You can't do anything with negative thinking. And you just start. Anything that you want to do, you got to start. For every person that's on this call, anything that we did, we had to start, right? We had to start with the Messy Mommies, with all things randomness at its finest. Miss Inez, with you having to reinvent yourself and go full time and actually, so here's the interesting part. You went full time into fashion, and it's something that you've done for 40 years. So it sounded like it was time.
It was.
Sound like it was time.
It was.
The leap of faith. So what are the steps to writing your book in the midst of your pandemic, in the midst of your walking limitation? Number one, be prepared. Number two, remove the excuses. Number three, get out of your comfort zone. Number four, start writing. Schedule a time to write. Number four, have a support circle. And that support circle of people who are going to keep you accountable. So when something happens, what's the first thing we think? We have things that are priority, right? So writing is not a priority. So it's like, okay, you know what, I can write. You know, this is I don't have time for this. So I'm going to write on something. I'll put this to next week. And then next week it goes down to the next month's pile. And before you know it, you're digging through some files. And this is real life. This happened today. You're digging through some files and you find something that you started writing back in 2009. And it's like, oh, wow, I started writing this back in 2009. So see, so you push it aside and push it aside. So start writing today. So don't push it, don't run away from it, run to it, and embrace it. And the last one is use your voice. Your voice is your story, and your story has the power to heal somebody else who's waiting for your story to help them. So again, I am LaQuita Parks. I want to thank you guys so very much for joining us in this segment of What's Your Story and our topic of walking limitations. Thank you so much to Brandy and to Shantae from Messy Mommies. And Brandy, if you guys can put your information in the chat so that people can reach out to you and connect with them. Miss Inez and Mr. Brooks, connect with them and, you know, network, get to know each other and, you know, see what's going on, you know, connect and network and see how we can help you be successful. So if you have any questions, if you need a publisher, if you have a story, and you don't know how to tell your story, I can help you. We can coach and develop you. We hold your hand and we walk you through the process. Okay. Does anybody have any questions before we go?
Yes. What was the first thing we're supposed to do before we remove excuses?
Number one is be prepared for storms. Be prepared for your storms. So if you prepare, you don't have to get prepared. And it's the same thing in writing. Prepare, make a concentrated effort to start writing. It's like, okay, and have an end game. I want to write. What's my end game? What am I gonna do to this? There had to be another way. So start, make a, what am I trying to say? I'm all over the place.
Make an end goal.
Make an end goal. Make an end goal. And I'm going to share my screen again quickly before we go. I don't know what happened here. Oh, can I share the screen? Here we go. I wanted to show you guys this. There are roadblocks. So the road ahead may be bumpy, but just around the corner is a rainbow in the clouds. So when you start to write your story, things are gonna happen. Life is gonna happen, but write your story anyway. I showed this picture to somebody and they sent me a message and say, are there alligators in that water? I said, could be. So the beauty of it is you don't have to go straight through the water. You can go around it, right? You can go over in the grassy area. You don't have to stay on your road with the walking limitations. So make a plan and understand what your walking limitation is. And here's our Messy Mommies, and this is the information, and I'll send that to you guys on how you can connect with Messy Mommies. And then reach out to me, LaQuita Parks with PayPro-V Publishing. If you need help to take your story from a thought to a realization, we can do that. You can reach out to me and you can visit us on our website at www.payprovpublishing.com. And we can help you take your story from a thought to a realization. And I am going to turn it back over to Mr. Kevin Vaughn. Thank you so much, Kevin.
Well, thank you so much, Ms. Parks. Everybody give yourself a hand for being here on Walking Limitations. I love it. Woo! That was powerful, ladies and gentlemen. And for those listening all across the globe, this has been Walking Limitations with your awesome host today, LaQuita Parks, ladies and gentlemen. I'm behind the scenes, Kevin Vaughn with the Men Let's Talk Network. We're just excited about networking and sharing this information with you. We thank everybody who's on right now. Thank you so much for being with us on the network today. Hey guys, we just want you to have an awesome day. Want you to get to it, write those books, get that poetry out. We want you to start today. Don't wait till tomorrow. You need to start right now. Write a few things down today and keep it moving. Amen. Hey, also too, you guys can go to payprovpublishing.com. Go right now to that website, payprovpublishing.com, for more information about this awesome opportunity to get your word out with no limitations. I love it. I love it. Anything else, Ms. Sparks?
That's it. So we will see you guys next month when we talk about effective communication. The third Wednesday of every month, we are here. We are helping you write your story, and you guys don't want to miss this one, writing your story and being effective in your communication. So we're going to talk about communicating your brand. Your story is your brand. How do you communicate that effectively in the writing process? So we'll see you then. And also, Kevin, we want them to make sure they tune in on Tuesday. We will be back on Tuesday, and we'll be talking about in honor of Autism Awareness Month.
Yeah.
We are going to be talking about suffering in silence. And we're going to have Brandy come back as one of our special guests.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about autism and some things that they've gone to. And there might be people listening who may not even know, may not be aware of what the signs are or what to look for. And so join us. And I see her little back there. So join us. I love this. This is real life, y'all. We got our babies here, and messy mommies can't do it. They show you they got these babies. Look at that little one right there.
Amen. I love
Near and dear. Love it.
Kiss the baby for us, please. Give the baby a kiss from Uncle Kev.
He sees Nana. That's my grandson. He sees Nana.
He's awesome. Yeah, he's powerful. I love it. That's the future, ladies and gentlemen. That's the future. That's why we got to do what we do, so his future is bright as well. Amen. Yes. Powerful. All right, everybody, have a great day. Remember to always out love, out forgive, and out serve each other. And remember, Jesus is Lord. You'll never want with him. Take care now, everybody. God bless you.
Bye-bye.
Amen. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you.